how as men can we be better partners? We're in this age where just providing money and providing a roof and food isn't enough. And no one teaches how to be a good lover, how to be a good boyfriend, how to be a good husband. No one teaches us this. We absorb so much from our parents and we reenact it. No matter how much we try not to, we do. Your partner isn't triggering you. Your past is triggering you. So the key here is, and I think another part of being a good partner is, the better us men can be in the world, the better our children will be. The world becomes a better place when men show up better. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm David Chambers, I'm your host. And yeah, I've been a host for this podcast for about 6 years now. I know some of you are avid listeners and told me and so forth. And I wanted to say a big thank you to those who've been listening. But if you're a new listener here, I'm a men's dating relationship coach. I'm supporting men to create, beautiful relationships, incredible relationships, deep relationships. So I want to talk about a topic here today that's just come up a few times. There's a simple question, like how as men can we be better partners? Because sometimes it's not really clear. No one teaches us how to be a good partner. No one teaches how to be a good lover, how to be a good boyfriend, how to be a good husband. No one teaches us this, right? We absorb things through our own childhood, watching our parents, and we unconsciously just reenact those things. And that's something that's really important, right? We absorb so much from our parents and we reenact it. No matter how much we try not to, we do. Something we get into in our relationships is, we might be trying to impress. We might only see our role as something like providing, like financially. This is something a lot of the men that come to me is they grew up in houses where all their dad did was provide house and money, and it was very good, right? They're good at providing. They have great jobs. They have multiple businesses, all these things, but they never taught the skills in the other aspects of what it means to be a good partner. And we're living in a day and age where men and women, to be honest, right, and predominantly women in my eyes, are wanting more than what their parents had, right? Their mothers had in particular. Because when we think back to our mothers, right? Those of you that, your parents were together, it's like they want more. The women in their lives want more, right? They want more than what their mothers had, right? So that's meaning that the women in life are calling for more, right? You might be seeing this on social media. You might see it inside of the relationships that your friends have. You might be seeing this inside your own relationship. You might see it you might even see that your parents now are shifting and changing because your mother's asking for more. We're in this age where just providing money and that's it, and providing a roof and food isn't enough. It's not enough. It's not enough as a man to do that as a partner. There's so much more, right? So let me start with the problem, right? The problem being, why and in what ways are you being a not great partner, a not good enough partner, or I prefer to say a shit partner. It might not be shit, but these are some of the small things that we do, right? Emotional absence, right? You might be physically around, like there on the dining table, on the sofa, but emotionally, you're just this empty thing, this empty void. You're not really there. You're not really supportive. You're distracted. You're on your phone. You're thinking about work, right? And this just lands as someone who isn't there. Like you might feel you're there physically, right? Because maybe you had a dad who wasn't there physically, right? So you're like, well, I've done better than him. I'm here physically. And great, well done. That's good. But there's more to it, right? Than just being there physically while you're looking out the window, you're thinking about your day, you're thinking about other things, and you're not really with the people you're with, right? Another way is this kind of defensiveness. You're trying to shut down any conversations or anything that feels uncomfortable. You're just not really, there for conversation. You're defensive, you're shut down, like all in them ways. And maybe sexually, you're not really there in your relationship. Maybe you're really into this kind of performing. There's men we're taught to perform, especially in the bedroom, that, everything from the size of our penis to how long we last to being the most important things, right? You're not really there. Again, you're just there in this kind of ego sense or the way you think things should look. Yeah. As another thing as well that a lot of men I speak to is they are very concerned. One of the problems they have in not being great partners is they're very concerned with how things look to the outside world, not how things are actually in their home, right? So this kind of keeping up with the Joneses and so forth. It could be materialism, like, being really concerned about the car you're driving, what the house looks like from the outside, or the holidays you're on. This over focus on money, this over focus on what things look like, and not really putting your attention on the kind of, what's it called? The substance. Some obvious ones are, being really lazy around the house, not contributing to kind of household chores, or not doing anything in the house, like not supporting, not, never hoovering, never cleaning, never organizing the cleaner, always leaving all that to your partner. And this is especially burdensome if both of you are working, right? Somehow you're working and they're working, but you're not taking care of that kind of emotional labor, right? And it could be that another issue is emotional labor, but not so it's the social labor. So like organizing day trips for your kids or for the two of you, or organizing your social calendar and, your people's birthday presents and stuff like that. Just leaving all of that to your partner and not doing any of that because you just see yourself as this provider and that's it. Another terrible trait of a lot of men that are in relationships that make for bad relationships is just avoiding conflict. Whenever conflict rears its head, they run away, they shut down, they don't want to talk about it. They're just not really there for those sorts of conversations, right? And then not supporting your partner's dreams is another thing, right? I see a lot of problems with a lot of men do. They're not supporting their partner's dreams. They're not really like engaged in what their partner wants, what their woman wants, what she's really about, who she wants to be. Disengaged from it. It's another problem. Another is avoiding kind of any self-reflection. Yeah, this can be a very painful one in relationships where there's a partner who avoids self-reflection. The other person is just left with your unhealed stuff, right? So what does this look like? If you've got these problems where you're kind of hearing from your partner, you're hearing them complain a lot. You're hearing them criticize you a lot, probably. You might be hearing them compare you to other men quite a lot. She might be going, oh, so-and-so husband does this, so-and-so's husband does that, so-and-so's partner does this, and so forth, right? And you might feel kind of attacked, belittled, and what's the other word I was looking for just there? Like downtrodden, right? And then that could feel like in your relationship, if you're not being a great partner in many ways, distance. You're experiencing distance in your relationship where, you're living in the same house, but you're barely speaking. You barely have any conversations. You're not really talking about anything important. You're not really engaging in any way. It's a very functional relationship. You do the functional things and she does the functional things. But when you're together, there's a distance on the sofa. You're sit opposite ends of the sofa. You barely really talking about anything important. There's not much laughing or joking or joy. The sex might have disappeared as well. It's another really common thing I find when there's this like partners are not showing up. Intimacy is disappears, right? So now we've kind of set this scene of like what it can look like and so forth. Let's dive a bit deeper in some of these points, right? So something I see habitually in men is this reactivity, this emotional piece, we call it, right? This emotional piece about being reactive. So we are operating from this kind of way in which we have all this kind of unhealed wounds and pain have happened to us in our lives. Maybe we had a mother who was prying into our lives, or maybe we felt rejected as young boys, right? For example, there's just two little examples. So when we're in our family home with our partner, little things happen and your wife, your partner might say something to you and you feel rejected, right? You might not notice you feel rejected, but you react as if you're being rejected, right? You might get defensive. You might shut down. You might walk out the house. Like you might get stroppy. You might act like a small child. An example can be that, you bring some sexual advances, for instance, to your partner one evening, and she says no, she's not in the mood. She's tired. It's been a long day. Yeah. And instead of being understanding and maybe even bring in an alternative, a massage or whatever, you react with defensiveness or frustration, kind of childish frustration, like, oh, you always do this. You never want to have sex. I'm so fed up of this. I should just go and cheat on you with someone else, Now, you might say that out loud, right? But that might be something you also just think in your own mind, right? Because you might think it in your own mind, which, having thoughts is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because we have thoughts, right? But those thoughts might lead you to shutting down and just rolling over and not talking and, not really being there, disconnecting, yeah, stonewalling or something like that, right? Or criticizing her, maybe, yeah, the counterattacking that we see sometimes when we get defensive or we feel rejected, that, I see this a lot in dating. When a man is rejected in a bar or club, instead of taking his rejection, graciously and like, oh, thank you very much, totally understand or whatever, he starts attacking the woman and telling her how ugly she is or unattractive she is or how she's going to be alone forever or something like that. Yeah. So for you in your partnership, that might be you criticizing your partner, you're telling her that she's a disappointment in some way. Yeah. And that's a really toxic thing to do in your relationship, right? And it might feel like you can't operate any other way. It might feel very automatic to be reactive in this way, right? Or the reactivity for you might be being asked to do something around the house, being asked to, I love using the dishwasher, unpack the dishwasher, for instance, around the house. And you might react with, but God, I'm out slaving all day working. Can't you just do it? Or it might be you're asked to take your kids somewhere or she might ask you to organize a date night. And instead of, being like, oh, yeah, something I can do, it's just reacting and being like, I'm tired. I've got too many things to do. Yeah. Is that seeing this reactiveness that happens. Or you're in a discussion about something and you feel like you're being attacked. She's critiquing you or she's saying something you haven't done very well. And instead of listening, your first thing you do is react. The first thing you do is defend yourself, criticize, or something like that. Yeah. So it's seeing that there's all this reactivity happening. And these little things might seem like minute things, but if they're constantly happening, they're constantly happening in your home, it creates this emotional distance between the two of you, right? It's this big emotional distance between the two of you. Constantly happening between the two of you, right? And it just destroys the connection, between two people. Really destroys the connection between two people. So what can you do? We need to start coming into a position of response, right? Meaning that when you're talking to your partner, you hear them, right? And they're speaking to you. And you can observe the emotional reaction that's arising. I can observe there's a part of me that wants to get really defensive, or there's a part of me that's wounded because I have a story around being not good enough, or that I am lazy, or whatever it is. It's definitely something that I experienced being told a lot as a young boy, right? And instead of reacting to that story and reacting to those feelings in the moment, just there in front of your partner, is to actually listen, like, where's what they're saying true? If they're saying that you're emotionally checked out or you don't pull your weight, instead of defending yourself, stopping and pausing and taking in those words and going, okay, where is that actually true? Actually, I don't actually do that much around the house. It might be a moment there of being like, you're right, actually. And I'm really grateful to you for all that you do around the home or, what it may be. And your partner might be surprised by this new type of way of reacting, right? Sort of disagreement and this escalating fight that happens when we're in this reactivity. Because when we are both reactive and start getting defensive, things just escalate. It just escalate and becomes a really big arguments, really big ruptures that are very hard to kind of bring back together, right? So what can we start to do? So we have to start to really pause and notice, right? Have the capacity to notice, like, actually, I there's some reactivity here. I get very reactive when people say things to me. I take it very personally, even when my partner's talking about other people. She might be talking about someone else's partner, husband, and the great things they do, or something that she saw on TV, and you hear that as some criticism of what you're not doing. And you get reactive. That's another way we get reactive, just hearing good things said about other people. So if that's you, right, and you want to listen to what I'm saying here, not from the point of view of like, no, this is all wrong, this is useless. It's like what I'm saying is true. Where is it? Where do you see it? The little nuggets that this actually happens, right? So in these moments, you want to just pause and listen and hear what's being said. Yeah. And a really easy thing to do is just to, instead of trying to respond, reject, be defensive, counterattack, is just to repeat back, to paraphrase back what's said to you. Because this gets you out of your thinking and your story and your emotions and keeps you in what's being said to you. Yeah. And then it allows you to have the space to respond to that, see where that's true, take a breath, slow down, hear your partner, right? Because also part of this reactivity is this assumption that maybe your partner's a nagging person. Are they always nagging? That's just what they do. I don't need to pay attention to this, right? But that also creates a disconnection. So the key here is like, be here to listen, be here to understand, so you can respond from a place of spaciousness, not from a place of being full of all your ideas and judgments and defensive and stories and emotional reactions and so forth. You want to start to create the capacity to have all those things occur and just observe them and not react to them. Because you think you might be reacting to your partner, but really you're just reacting to the internal story and emotions you're having about what's being said. It's just like being able to be present to what's being said and respond in a way that comes from a place that's grounded and spacious and not just a reactive response, right? That's the key. That's where you're trying to get to. Because this singular point here can transform your whole relationship, right? I've seen this work with men I've worked with inside the relationships. It transforms relationships, right? Because what you're doing here is you're diffusing a lot of unnecessary tension and like stress energy that builds up in the relationship. So when you react, your partner reacts, and then you react, and then it just escalates. Whereas if you can be the one to kind of lead and just go, oh, I'm just going to listen and then I'm going to respond. One person can't escalate things on their own. If you stay calm and someone just keeps responding to your calmness with like escalating kind of charged emotion, there's a point where the differential becomes so great that the other person almost looks at themselves and they're like, what? Why am I even here? What am I doing? You know, you feel like you're crazy. You know, I'm sure you've had this where someone's being really calm and you're kind of like getting really angry, really frustrated. And then there's a moment where you both stop and the other person's being calm and you look at yourself and you're like, what the fuck's going on with me? What's wrong? You know? And you can also regulate situations with your own calm that you bring in. So, next point. It's going to be about emotional safety. This is something traditionally as men we're really bad at cultivating because this is one of the things we're really not taught. From a young age as men, we are taught that emotions are unimportant. Yeah. We are taught that it's an aspect of masculinity that we should suppress. You know, we can be angry, we can be lustful, we can't cry, we can't be too affectionate. All these things often come up. Even if you're, you know, I often talk about attachment styles being anxious and avoidant, right? Even if you're an anxious man, you still have the programming, you still have the societal narrative around how you should be to be a man, right? And I've done plenty of episodes about things like the man box. You know, we should be dominating, we should be in charge, we should be in control and all these things, right? We should never talk about anything too deep. But all these things strangle a relationship emotionally, right? Because ultimately, a relationship is an emotional vehicle. You're in a relationship because you love somebody, right? There's compatibility and all those sorts of things, but there's love. You know, a relationship is a vehicle of love and growth. Yeah. Like you're in a relationship from a spiritual standpoint to grow as a human being. It's why if you have children, you understand this, or, you know, you don't have to have children to understand this fully. Is like, you might have looked at your father and gone, I want to be a better partner than they were to my mother, right? Or I want to be a better dad than they were to me. That's a spiritual piece in my eyes, right? It's like, I want to be better. Or you could argue it's an evolutionary piece, right? But nonetheless, it's like you're there to be better than what came before you. And part of that is to bring a level of emotional safety and emotional connection to a relationship that our fathers and the men that came before us just don't have. Or if I'm really honest with you, most men don't have the capacity to have. Yeah. Most men don't have the capacity to have an emotionally connected relationship, an emotionally attuned relationship, right? So what does that start to look like? Emotional safety. Listening to your partner without interrupting them. Yeah. It's a really important one. I did a workshop the other night, and I was taking them through an Imago dialogue, which is a really important, useful tool that I use in my relationship and with my clients. And this listening without interrupting allows for a deepening of conversation, a deepening of experience together, a swapping of like a really listening, getting deeper into someone. And when you've been in a relationship for a while, it can be quite difficult to really listen to our partner because conversation is often back and forth. We don't listen in the same way we did in the early days with this kind of curiosity, right? Of this person, like, oh, who is she? Because we have this lens, this idea in our minds that we know who she is. So we are often butting in and jumping in and saying in our minds what we think they're going to respond to even. So this listening out interruption is a really important place to create this safety, right? Listening to the feeling that's underneath what's being said as well, even if it's not uttered and said, yeah? So it might be listening and being like, oh, okay, I understand what you're saying. I'm hearing that actually in there's a bit of sadness or upset or pain or confusion. It helps us feel more deeply understood and seen. So you want to be a better partner, right? Start to really deeply listen to your partner without interrupting. Another thing as well is to not be jumping to solutions and fixes. This is something we do a lot, right? As men, we jump to solutions and fixes. And often from a very loving place of wanting to support and help the person, but it also shuts them down, right? And it also comes from this belief that they don't have the solution themselves. And obviously this is different if someone consciously comes to you and says, hey, I really need help with something, right? But that doesn't actually happen that often. Often what happens is we open our mouths, we talk about something, and then the other person just jumps in and gives a solution, right? Based on part of the information or whatever, not knowing if actually we've already had a solution, right? And we're just expressing ourselves, right? And this is something we do as men. We're particularly trying to fix things and solve things for people because we see our value in being useful, right? In solving problems. So what I'm suggesting is holding back from this and just listening deeply. And it might be uncomfortable because you might have to listen to a lot of emotion, or you might feel like the person, your partner, is like spiraling and going over the same thing a lot of the time. It might feel really inefficient. But who said a relationship should be efficient, right? It's not your work. You can't biohack your relationship, right? I'm sure someone's got some podcasts about that, biohacking your relationship. But it's not. This is a really deeply inefficient and expensive and powerful vehicle. Your relationship is not meant to be efficient. You can't make your partner's words and self-expression efficient. It's never meant to be. Yeah, it's emotions. Emotions are not efficient things. So this kind of speaks into another point inside this kind of emotional safety, is like honoring our feelings as something valuable and important, not just seeing them as something that's like, that you roll your eyes at. I even roll my eyes there, roll your eyes at, or uncomfortable with, or see as pointless. It's like learning to be with the feelings and emotions. And this can take a while to really learn. Yeah. To be in there curious about her feelings, her emotions, what's going on in her world, her experience as well. Yeah. Like really important things to create this safety, emotional safety. Another thing I think inside of emotional safety and general relationship safety is keeping your word. Keeping your word is like, I say the things I'm going to do, and I do the things I'm going to say. I do the things I'm going to say. Yeah. You keep your word. So that you become a dependable and trustable man. If someone knows they can depend on you, they can trust you, and they do the things you say you're going to do, emotional safety starts to automatically be there. And it also adds a lot of grace for the moments when you do mess up, because you're going to mess up, right? There's no expectation of you being perfect, a perfect partner, because you're not going to be. You can't. It's impossible to be a perfect partner. Yeah. But keeping your word, and then I'll add on to that, when you're not going to be your word, letting them know and cleaning it up. Like I'll give you an example. Yesterday night, it's a very live example. I also told me that she was going to go to the gym with the car and Bjorn. And I had my little sister had asked me if I would help her move some stuff into her new flat, and I had said yes, but I hadn't actually checked it also when she was going to go to the Crest and gym. So when I told her, she was like, "Hey, you didn't tell me, we should communicate better." And I was like, "You are absolutely right. I didn't." And I've said that I would communicate better with you these things and not just plan things and not tell you. I'm really sorry about that. What time are you going to the gym? And she was like, no, I can change it. And I was like, no, you don't change it. I will fit around what you've originally said to me, and I was able to move my plans and everything worked for everybody. But you see, there is like, I'm not trying to defend myself. I'm owning up to what happened powerfully as well. Like, there's no shame. I know I messed up and it's okay. I'm a human being. We both accept that as well, right? I have good intentions. I want to help people, help my sister, and so forth, right? But it's like keeping your word or doing the things you say you're going to do. Yeah. Another thing I think also important inside this is like honoring and respecting all of her emotions, even the ones you don't like. The crying, the upset, the emotions she has about you and the things you do and don't do, right? Honoring all of them because they all have value, right? Because so many of us, men and women, we've grown up and we felt like our like emotions are not valuable, and we've been kind of criticized for them or made to suppress them. So through like honoring someone's feelings and emotions, you're helping her heal from any pain and trauma that she had around her feelings and emotions, right? By just being there as an open space, as loving partner. And a little hidden thing that, and this isn't true of what all women want, because there's nothing that all women want. But in generally, what I found is if you can create emotional safety in a relationship, you will have better sex. You will have more sex, better sex. Very, very simple, right? And this is the same thing that the Gottmans, the Julie and, God, his name has completely slipped my mind. The Gottmans, they're a couple, they created the Gottman Institute and they've been researching love and relationships for, 50 or 60 years. It's an incredibly long time. They've been married this whole time as well. And they say there's some things that couples who have really successful relationships do, right? And it's nothing that they do in the bedroom. Things like they cuddle, they take romantic trips together, they talk about sex openly, they express their love, they do kissing and hugging and all these little things, right? That create emotional safety and connectedness, right? Emotional safety leads to better sexual intimacy and connection. Yeah, almost always. There's a couple other ingredients in there as well, but emotional safety almost always equals good sex and plenty of it. Yeah. You can't forget the safety of your relationship. And the thing is, you might be hearing this and go, oh, my relationship is safe. It is emotionally safe. But where are your blind spots? Yeah. Where are the things you're unconscious of that you're doing that are not creating that safety or destroying the safety in a relationship? How emotionally safe does your partner feel? Because that's the gauge as well as your emotional safety. Because if you don't have a good understanding of emotions and feelings, right? And the chances are you don't, because it's a multi-layered thing. A lot of people think they're emotionally intelligent, but they're not very good at feeling, expressing, being attuned to their partner, for example. There's a whole chasm of blind spot that you can't see, where the emotional safety in relationship is eroded. So it's really important that you discuss this with your partner as well. How emotionally safe do you feel? Do you feel safe to express any emotion you want in this relationship? It's a very good question to ask your partner. Yeah. Is there any emotions you don't feel safe to express around me? Is there any examples where you've expressed certain emotions and I haven't been loving and accepting of them? Then you're going to get some real good feedback and information that will help you be a better partner. Yeah. Because part of being a better partner is asking good questions. And I think another part of being a good partner is, and this kind of fits into my next piece about kind of leadership and structure. Yeah, this masculine leadership and structure. As much as we have come so far as human beings into a world that can feel very equal in many ways. I just read the other day from the Lost Boys report for the first time in the UK, women between 18 and 24. There's another gender pay gap occurs now within that, where women are earning 10% more than men do at that age, 18 to 24 in the UK. They're equal in many ways, but ultimately inside relationships, predominantly, there's a need for masculine leadership from a man. There's a need for it. And I've talked about this on podcast episodes. There's a wonderful episode with John Wyland, which I think is a really good episode for you to chow into around masculine leadership, is because you need to be able to lead. It doesn't mean you're going to lead all the time. And leadership isn't force. It isn't manipulation. It isn't control. It's creating direction and intention. Yeah. It's the sort of leadership that someone they decide to be led. They choose to be led because it's in line with what they desire and what they want. Yeah. Because you're in a relationship with somebody. So you're this singular unit, right? This relationship, the relationship entity, and it requires direction and leadership, or it'll just drift, like a leaf on a pond or something, right? Because there's somewhere you want to go with your relationship. You want it to be deeper. You want it to be more connected. Maybe you want children. Maybe you want to be in a better neighborhood, a nicer house, or to raise children that are really emotionally attuned, or you want to raise children that are going to have beautiful careers and wonderful job opportunities, or not experience the difficulties you had. This all takes leadership, because otherwise it will just drift and it won't happen, because your leadership will be a vacuum. And one of two things happens. Either you force your partner to lead, right, all the time, or your fears, your worries, and your anxieties will lead your relationship. AKA your wounds and your trauma will lead your relationship. If you don't consciously lead your relationship, your wounds, your trauma, and your pain will unconsciously lead it, because it's always unconsciously in play. So you need to be able to bring leadership. And again, I reiterate this, it doesn't mean you have to lead everything, and you don't have to be controlling, and you don't have to be forceful, right? But you need the capacity of leadership. And a lot of men really don't have that in their relationships, right? And leadership requires a level of emotional attunement to yourself, your desires, your wants, your values, also your partners, and also your relationship, right? What's the values and agreements of your relationship? What's the direction you both want your relationship to go? Because otherwise, like I said, trauma, pain will lead a relationship, or she will, and she'll grow tired of having to do it all the time. If she's always having to organize all the social occasions, if she's always having to come up with the ideas for gifts for your family and your friends, if she's always having to make decisions about your children and the home and all these sorts of things, the list can go on, she will grow tired, especially if you're passive. If you're really passive in this, you're always deferring leadership to her in instances. So how can you start to provide direction and leadership and intention for your relationship? Simple things are like date nights, organizing a date night. Yeah. Taking on responsibility for certain things in the relationship, right? That could be, you could take responsibility for organizing your children's after school stuffs, or you could take responsibility for planning holidays. Yeah. Just a couple of examples. Yeah. And responsibility doesn't mean you do everything. Yeah. Responsibility doesn't mean you do everything. You just take responsibility for something, and it doesn't mean you delegate all of it to her. It might be like, I'm going to take responsibility for booking a holiday, right? And I often do take responsibility for booking holidays because I quite enjoy it. It's something I quite enjoy as well. So I might go, okay, where would be really beautiful? What do I know of her, and what do I know of me, and what do we need right now? Right? That's that awareness piece you're bringing in. Like, what I'm aware of who we are, what we want, what's going on in our lives now. You might be like, wow, we've been really stressed. We need a holiday that's really relaxing and easeful and maybe not too much of a long journey. Great. So you might pick up your laptop, go into ChatGPT, or you might start searching and go, okay, let's find some really beautiful hotels that are within, 4 to 6 hours flight away from where you are. Or even a few hours drive if you're lucky enough to have that on your doorstep, right? And then you might bring them and go, hey, I was thinking that, holiday wise, we'd love something really like relaxing because you've had a lot of stress going on. I have had a lot of stress going on. So I thought about this spa hotel where we can do this and this, and there's some lovely excursions we can do. And these are the few places I've come up. What do you think? She might be like, oh, that's exactly what I need. That's exactly it. Yeah. Or she might say to you, actually, yeah, that would be nice, but actually it'd be nice to do a bit more. And you go, okay, cool. Let me just integrate that feedback and I'll come back to you with some more ideas. This is how we lead things. Yeah. We take on feedback. Leaders take on feedback from people. They're attuned to the people they're leading, right? Be that in a business, be that in a relationship. Yeah, be that your children, you're attuned to them, and you take on the information with the awareness of them, what's going on, what you all desire, and you action that into creating results, solutions, options. While also another piece of leadership is creating kind of rituals and structures that deepen the relationship, that bring the relationship closer to where you want it to be, right? So that might be, as I mentioned, date nights. That might be weekly or monthly check-ins in your relationship. Those rituals could include like intimacy rituals. Yeah, it might be choosing to like, I found this tantra book. I say that because that happened to me also in the beginning of a relationship. During lockdown, I found this tantra book. It was called 28 Days to Ecstasy. And I was like, let's do this every day. And she was like, okay, great. Let's do this every day. So 20 minutes a day. And it was fantastic. Yeah. I brought in a structure. I brought in some evening ritual. You know, another way we must lead our relationships, masculine leadership must take care of the structure of the relationship. One of those things are the kind of culture and boundaries of our relationship, right? The culture of relationship, taking responsibility for the culture of relationship. That can be how we talk to each other. That can be how the sort of way that we deal with conflict, the sort of things that the way we talk to each other, the way we want in our relationship, this kind of culture, you know, like we have a culture in our countries, we have a culture in our businesses, you know, and there's all sorts of thought and idea that goes into those things. Yeah, the culture of businesses, so especially, you know, as a cultural change is a big thing. And that's also a responsibility you must take up as a masculine leader in a relationship, is looking after the culture of a relationship and holding those boundaries. You know, if you're in a disagreement and one of you starts to criticize character or swear or shout, and that's outside the boundary, you may say, hey, we have a boundary about this. We said we don't talk to each other like this. Like, why don't we take a few minutes and come back? Yeah. It doesn't mean you're solely responsible for it, but you have to have the capacity to take responsibility for it. Leading a relationship is incredibly important. Yeah. Being able to lead your partner is incredibly important. You know, if we think of it like a dance, in most dances, there's a leader and there is someone who, I don't know if they call them a follower, but there's one person that takes the lead. Yeah. In some dances, we switch that round, but you have to have the capacity to lead. Yeah. It's very, very important, and something that I think is really lacking with a lot of men. Another piece is about sexual integrity, sexual discipline. Like, sex is an important aspect of a relationship, right? And I think, as I mentioned before, our value in sex is not about our size, our stamina, and our technique. Yeah. It's about our capacity to hold presence and be with our partner deeply. If you want to take sex to a whole different level that's beyond this, just bodies and so forth, is like diving deep into this stuff of presence and depth of feeling. Yeah. You want to create really beautiful, transcendent, unforgettable sexual moments and experiences. This is where you want to go. You want to start getting out of this reactivity, out of the mind stories, and into this deep presence and togetherness that you can cultivate. And I hear some of you are like, oh, we got children. Yeah, it's not so easy when you have children. I can say that. But it's not to say it has to be hours long. You know, you find your time, you schedule your time and so forth. You know, sex and sexual intimacy is important, and it's deeply linked to emotional safety inside a relationship as well, as I said before. And looking after that is an important aspect of your relationship. So one of the things we often do as men is we have this very leaky sexual energy, right? We are lusting after Instagram models, or we are ogling other women, and we're not kind of pointing us the sexual energy, this refined sexual desire towards our partners. Maybe because we feel it's been rejected in the past, right? But it's that when I use the word refined, yeah, that's a really important piece. It's this refined energy, if not just the lustful primal, only the lustful primal energy, right? There's nothing wrong with our lustful primal energy. It really has a place. But if that's the only energy you bring to your partner, you know, of trying to grab her ass and kiss her sexual every time, but there's no refined nature to your sexual energy. There's not like just a beautiful holding gaze that's loving and is full of this tinge of desire and reverence. Maybe she wants a mix of what feels like sexual energy, and you've only got one track. Yeah. So there's some cultivating of these different levels of sexual energy you can bring. And some of this can come through sexual practices like breath work, or I taught Kundalini yoga. It's not something I'm well versed in. Breath work or embodiment practices or tantric practices, to start to have this wider range of tapestry of sexual energy you bring to your relationship. But it can also be some very simple things, like instead of sex always following this really linear path, kissing, clothes come off, oral sex, penetration done, is you start to mix things up a bit. You start to slow things down. Yeah. Maybe you spend some time once a day just kissing your partner for a minute or two, with no need for it to go anywhere, but just be there, just to enjoy the moments of those kissing. Yeah. To hold each other passionately. Because when it's linear, it gets boring, and anything that feels boring for us, our bodies start to reject and we don't really want. Or maybe it's learning to really hold the sexual energy in penetration, so that you don't come very quickly or you don't go too fast because you're overtaken by lust. You just take your time, and you can slow down and you can stop and really go slow and be in the feeling of it all, instead of trying to get to the end goal. Or maybe for you, it's actually having more conversations with your partner about sex, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, what they would like. Or maybe they don't know. So maybe it's a case of going, oh, let's explore this. Let's try some things together. Let's read some books. Let's listen to some podcasts together. Again, these are aspects of leadership, right? Or maybe your partner's a bit uncomfortable and you say, okay, where would you be willing to start? This is something. But if this is the only area like let's grow in, and you're leaving the emotional growth on the table, the leadership on the table and so forth, don't start here. Yeah. Be a generous partner and be like, what's most important to her, for example? Most important to her might be that you're helping out around the house. Okay. Do that for 6 months before you put a demand on the sexual aspect of your relationship. And I know you heard 6 months, you're like, that's a really long time. But like, you might find that just doing that takes care of that. You know, there's studies that show that men who do more housework get more sex. There's a lot of studies that show that men who do more housework get more sex. And I think it's mad that is, that's what happens, but it's true, right? Because you imagine it, you're relieving your partner of stress and burden, right? You're taking responsibility, you're showing your care, you care. And this creates a better relationship, right? You're using your awareness, this kind of beautiful masculine skill, not from a masculine point of view of gendered. And, you know, when I say masculine, I'm not really meaning gendered. A skill of awareness, of consciousness, and you're putting it to good use on action. Yeah, doing the thing you want to do, taking action. You're like, I can see where this thing's missing in our lives, or I can show up better here, using your awareness, and then you're taking action on it. And these things will create a huge change in a relationship. Now, I've touched on this last point a little bit, but I'm going to just put it all into here. The key thing really to be a better partner is to do your own personal development work. Yeah, because if you don't do the work on your pain, your trauma, your fears, your anxieties, the uncomfortabilities, you know, these wounds around rejection, inadequacy, not being good enough, inability to love deeply and express your emotions, the work around your attachment style potentially as well, yeah, or your father wound or your mother wound, you're just going to limit the relationship, and your partner will feel the pain of that. Yeah. And this is really, you know, as I say, warriors work. It's brave work to face this stuff, the stuff that I've done myself a lot of, and I do with my clients, right? Because if you don't do this, your relationship becomes limited and you'll stay in this being reactive, right? Or stay being run by your stories and your fears and your anxieties. And when our relationship is filled with that, it's painful for us. This is why relationships break down. And a lot of men come to me in that process of relationship breakdown. And it's because there's this stuff, right? This weighing their relationship down that they have not looked at. Yeah. This can involve things like the work you do, things like shadow work or inner child work, father wound, mother wound work, inner critic stuff. I think is always really important for men as well. Emotional piece, emotional work as well. Because if we don't, it just weighs down our relationship and creates this, it just sucks energy out of the relationship. In many of the ways that I've mentioned already. You know, and I got this little line here. It's like, your partner isn't triggering you. Your past is triggering you. And that past that's being triggered is pointing you to something that needs to be healed and needs to be done something about. And it's like a calling forward. It's like a siren to like, this is somewhere. This is a danger siren to, this is something that needs to be taken care of. This is something that needs to be healed, fixed, sorted out, looked at. And if you keep leaving it, it gets deeper, it gets louder, right? And it causes more havoc in your life. So to wrap up, the key here is emotional safety, leadership, communication, showing up to your partner, taking the practical ways to be a better partner, housework, taking emotional load and burden, listening deeply to them, communicating more powerfully, more openly, more honestly. I don't think we really dived into that but like communicating yourself more openly, your emotions more openly, what's happening to you, what's going on for you, what's going on in your life, your decisions, your choices, the things you're wanting to do. So the person knows you, your woman knows you more deeply, right? It's really, really important aspects of this. But also providing leadership and sexual integrity to a relationship and cultivating presence. Yeah. And all these aspects. These are the things that make real relationship better. These are the kind of like, they're not just the actions. Some of them are actions, some of them are very practical things, right? But these will spawn a change in your relationship, the culture of relationship, how it feels for everybody in it. And here's the thing. As I said before, you're not going to get this perfect all the time. Being a great partner isn't about perfection, right? It's a practice. Like any practice, there's going to be mistakes you make and learnings you get from that. So it's just to remember along the way, you're not going to be a perfect partner. No one's expecting you to be a perfect partner, apart from maybe yourself in your head. If you have an inner critic that sounds a lot like mine, that's always berating when you make mistakes, or an inner critic that wants to be defensive, right? No one's expecting you to be perfect. It might feel like that to you, but your feelings are not always a gauge of what's really happening in reality. Yeah. It might feel like that, but no one's expecting you to be a perfect partner, right? But they might be asking you to be better, calling you forward to something more. And if you don't do that work, your relationship will suffer. And it's much better to do it early, even before it becomes a problem, than waiting for the problem to surface and then you having to fix it. Because then there's resentment, and resentment can be very difficult to shift. Yeah. And I know this from my own experience personally in relationship, and also the many men that have come to me when their relationship on the brink of falling apart and ending, marriages ending, all these things. And often it's because they didn't do anything early enough. They stayed grumpy and frustrated and resentful and didn't communicate and were angry at their partners and never talked about it, never stepped into the ring to deal with it. So don't let that be you. So if this is an episode that's been useful to you, share this with another man, always. Share it with another man or woman, anybody who would find this useful, because, the better us men can be in the world, the better our children will be, the better our grandkids will be, the better, the world becomes a better place when men show up better. That's really what I believe in all aspects, from relationships to politics to world affairs and all these things. This needle will shift, but it will happen slowly. But when we share and we help our brothers and our friends to make those changes, we create better relationships as well. And that's maybe something that I haven't mentioned that would make you a better partner, is having good, trustable men in your life. Men that you can trust, men that you can rely on, men you can get good feedback from. It's been revolutionary for me over my life. It's like good men you can trust. Yeah. You can look up to, or just like solid, trustable men. Not these waste men who you're like, I've known him for years, he's my mate, but you can't really ask him for advice because his life's in disarray, or you can't trust his, sort of things he said, or you got men in your life who are just yes men, or if you just don't really have that many friends, this is something that's really true for a lot of men. So getting good men in your life. So in closing, if you are a man that doesn't have good men in your life, I guess one of the things I would say is, I run a community of men, and I'm going to be opening that up again. The men have really loved being in there. They're still there. It's an ongoing community. I'm opening up twice a year at the moment, where we challenge each other. We hold each other accountable. We seek feedback. There's coaching from me. There's challenges. There's in-person sessions as well that I'm organizing with the men. There's just like this community of men who are doing this work, that are being better men and supporting other men being better men. So if that's something you're interested in, just drop me an email and ask me about the community, and I'll give you some more details about that when that's opening up. because it's only going to open up for like a month period. That actually is going to probably be in June, July. So you want to get in contact with me now because there'll be limited spaces. I'm only taking a certain number of men in. So if there's something interesting to you, then let me know. If you're looking for one-to-one coaching, then just drop me a message. We'll have a chat about that as well. But this work is vital to your relationship and also the future of our, I say it sounds really grand, the future of our planet, but I really agree that it is. So thank you for being here. And I say, ciao, ciao.